In order to do the rear, you do have to have access to VAGCOM or OBD11, and that's just because you have to disengage your electronic parking brake in the back. If you don't have one of those two, there is a way to do it, and there's other videos on YouTube that show you how to disengage it without using one of those programs, but the easiest way possible is definitely OBD11 or BC. Hey guys, if you liked what you just saw and you want to know how to be able to do that to your car, then stick around because I'm going to show you how to install a Realsun cockpit interface video board to your instrument cluster and how you're going to wire that so that you can swap between whatever's on your phone and your MMI system so that you have a heads-up display between your tachometer and speedometer. But before we get into that, I just want to remind you guys, if you find the content on the channel helpful, please take a moment and like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also find us on Instagram at Audi C7 owners. We'd really appreciate the support there as much as you guys support us on YouTube. But without further delay, let's get into the DIY on installing this. Before you go out and buy this product, you need to make sure it's compatible with your car. So let me turn my car off here completely. I'm gonna let everything close. And the way you do this is you have to bring up some diagnostic info on your MMI screen. And so what we need to do is locate our mileage reset button, which is this one over here. And so we need to hold that button as well as start the car. So I'm gonna try and do this. I'm gonna kind of wedge my phone in here and I'm gonna drop it. I'm too lazy to actually get the tripod for this one. So I'm going to hold this button. I'm going to hold it for about 3 seconds. And then as soon as I hold it for about 3 seconds, I'm going to turn the car on. Now, when you do that, you should have this come up. Okay? And what you need to look for is that HW version. It should say H7 and then something else, or H8 and then another number. As long as you have H7 or H8, we're talking about that number right there. As long as it's H7 or H8, then this cockpit digital interface will work with your MMI system. If it doesn't say H7 or H8 under the HW version number, then it will not be compatible. Before we get started, let's give you a quick rundown of what comes in the box. So this is the box after it comes out of the packaging, but we open it up and the first thing we see on top are our instructions. You've got your HD video converter. We've got the, basically this is the wireless display dongle. This is what we're gonna be plugging in that allows our phones to connect to the system via Wi-Fi so that it can mirror the phone to the center display there between the tachometer and the speedometer. We've got our wiring harnesses that we'll be using. We have a HD video camera that it comes with. This right here in this packaging is gonna be the add-on for our instrument cluster. This is what we're going to be using to connect the board, the new board that runs everything. This is the new bracket that it comes with. It has all new screws, and then make sure we keep that on bubble wrap. And then in here, this is the actual new board with the new ribbon display. I'm not going to take it out because I don't want to damage it, but that's what we're going to be plugging into the back of our instrument cluster to make this whole thing work. And then last but not least, it looks like we have a HDMI 2.0 cable here. It says HDMI 2.0 AM to AF cable. So I'm sure all of this is going to come in handy. Let's get into the install. This is a quick rundown of all the parts we're going to be removing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lower my steering wheel all the way down. This will give me a lot better access to all this trim parts in the back because we're going to be removing all this. You can see I've got a little crack here. Let me zoom in. That is from when I installed my P3 gauge. So you see that little crack? That just shows you exactly how fragile this stuff is. So definitely take your time, don't rush any of this. But we're going to be removing this trim piece here. We're going to be removing this vent, and if you've got a P3 gauge, you know what to do here. It's not too complicated. We're going to be pulling that out. We're going to be removing this top trim piece here, and these have clips in the back. I'll show you how to get all those out. Those will be coming out. Pretty sure we're going to be removing this trim piece here that has all the vents connected, everything to it. Be careful because that button is wired up. You want to make sure that all these buttons, they should have wiring harnesses back there. Don't damage any of that. Once all that is out and this is disconnected, then we should have access to all the bolts that hold in the instrument cluster. So we don't have to actually remove the dash or anything like that. Take your time as you go through this. Do not rush anything. Do not try and force this stuff off because it will break clips. You will potentially crack your trim. Just take your time and go easy. Use your trim tools and the stuff should pop out. We'll show you what to do. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to work on is trying to slowly remove trim pieces that I can remove pretty easily and work my way around here. So I've got an assortment of trim tools I'm going to use. Just try and go very slowly here. So this piece here, you can't pull off until you undo this bolt here. This, you just got to work it out slowly. Be very easy with it. There we go. So, got that out, didn't damage it any more than it already was. So we've removed this trim piece, we removed the center trim piece, and now we need to get this vent out of the way to expose the bolts behind it. This is an 8mm bolt, so we've got our socket. We're gonna go ahead and remove this. Don't lose that bolt. Luckily that fell into my tray there, but anyways, as you pull this out, there's a wire underneath there. You can't just yank it out, so don't damage it. So as you pull it out, you have to maneuver it out of this, and then you have to unclip that wire underneath the bottom. But I'm gonna go ahead and pull this out. Once I get this out, we'll come back and show you the other side of the dash, what we need to do to access that side. Okay, so we've got our vent out. You can see one bolt exposed here, which you could probably access that with the vent in there, but the bolt that you cannot access is this one over here. Let me get it zoomed in. Is this one right here. This whole trim piece from your vent covers that. So now we have access to both of those. Next up is going over here and working all of this trim and these vents out to expose the two bolts on this side. And then we should be able to pull this instrument cluster out and start working on it. This is the best angle I could get to show you guys how to remove this piece. So we're gonna start on this end of our trim. We're not messing with the actual display here. This is your display that comes out and rises up. We're not messing with that at all. Anyways, we're not removing this here. We are just popping this trim piece out here. We're gonna start from this end and work our way across slowly, trying to pop this out. So I'm gonna try and just gently get this moving. And once you get that one piece in, and you get one started, you should be able to just go through here and slowly work it out completely. Be careful not to break anything. I find for this trim piece here, this nice wide tool trim does a much better job than a thin piece, like a really small trim tool. And there we go. So you can see now we have 8mm bolts here, and so we're gonna have to undo those. There are some bolts in the back here. We're not removing those. Those are for your display. So we're gonna move these two bolts right here, and this should allow us to start to pop out this whole section here. All right, got it loose, popped out. Remember, there's some wires here that are connected to everything. You can flip it up and you can access these, but we don't even really need to worry about that because now just with it sitting right here, we have access to the other two bolts. There's one in the back here and there's one right in here. If you can see my finger, there we go, right. All right, next up is removing the 4 8mm bolts that hold in the instrument cluster. You can see one right there, one right there, if I can get the light on it. We move over, you've got one right there. I'll zoom in so you can see it. And then you've got one down there. So those are 4 bolts, and then that should start to be able to just pull right out. Now, I'm leaving my vent in there, so be careful as you pull this stuff out not to damage anything. Remember not to yank the instrument cluster out. We'll show you what we're talking about once we've got these unbolted. Something I want to point out real quick, these are your 2 different bolts here. So the bolt on the left is one of the bolts that holds like your trim pieces in, like the one that your vent on the left hand side. This bolt on the right that's a little bit longer, this is one of the 4 bolts that holds on the outer bezel of the instrument cluster. Okay, you see how this is loose now? So the longer bolts, there's 4 of them for the instrument cluster bezel here, and the other shorter bolts are for like this vent and your other miscellaneous ones like that, like the 2 we took out over here. So don't get those mixed up. All right, so I started pulling and tugging on this, and I realized that this was not going to come out with what we have removed. So I started doing some looking around and found out that there's these trim pieces here that you can see. Let me get a light on that for you. these right here, those plastic ones come off, and I've already got this side off, and you can see that it reveals another 8mm bolt down there. Let me see if I can zoom in. You can see it on the bottom there. So to pop these off, you just get a trim piece, or I'm sorry, a trim tool, and you just get underneath it like this, and it pops right off, and you can work its way out here very easily. Pop it off, and you have access to the other bolt. So I'm going to get those removed and keep working on this and see. Okay, so we got those two bottom bolts that were hidden out, and truthfully, you remember when we took off this first center trim piece, I think you probably could have left that on, just popped off those bottom covers and got those bolts off, and we could have left that silver trim piece on there. So if you're doing this, watching this job, you can go ahead and leave that piece on there. But this is now all coming off here pretty easily now. There's one part back here that's a little stuck, but you just have to maneuver it out, and then this is loose. So the only thing that's connected here is this bottom trim piece is connected to the bezel. You just have to push it off, and now your instrument bezel is completely off. We can just set that up and out of the way. This piece is attached to the leather that stays there, and now we've revealed two bolts on the left side. Let me get a light on here. You can see a bolt there and a bolt there, and that appears to be the only bolts left holding in our instrument cluster. All right, we have all the bolts removed. This should be ready to come out. You can see it is loose. Now remember, don't just yank it out. There is a wire back here, and what you're gonna have to do is just reach back with your hands, and once we have this done out completely, I will show you what we're doing here. But there is a locking clasp that we gotta find and disconnect. We've got it out. Be careful pulling it out not to damage anything. And we officially have our instrument cluster out of the car. Okay, y'all, so let me show you these clips. There's two wiring harnesses on the back of your instrument cluster, okay? So this black one's real easy, and as you saw there, you can get your head up under there to see both of these, but this one just has a single pinch tab. You can see that one. You just pinch it and pull it out, so that one's easy. This one has this orange locking clasp, and this orange locking clasp, once you push it in, basically you push this into the back of the instrument cluster, and then this orange clasp comes over here and clicks in, and that's what locks it in there. So when you go to remove it, it's gonna be like this, and you have to pull this orange clasp down like that, okay? So once you get your eyes in there and you can actually see what you're doing, it's pretty simple to do. While this is open, this is a really good chance to clean all the dust and debris out here, so go ahead and do that. But now we're going to move over to the table and work on the actual instrument cluster. Okay, so now is where we start to disassemble our instrument cluster so that we can add on the new board and replace the back plate. Word of warning, if you have a warranty and you do this, you are going to void your instrument cluster warranty and probably some other things, but it's got this little seal here. My car is well out of warranty, so I'm not worried about that. Word of warning number 2, this speaker right here is your driver warning speaker, okay? If you damage this or any of the wires associated with it, this could this could result in your automatic cruise control malfunctioning or any of your other driver automated systems. So be very careful with this, but what we have to do here is we have to basically pry up this piece of plastic here to expose a speaker wire, and then we have to disable the speaker wire. Whole thing. So let's try the other way. There we go. Pop it up from the other side. Then this just tilts back, and then this red and black wire that connects here, that is your speaker wire. Do not damage this. But we do have to remove this right here. So instead of trying to use my fingers, I'm gonna grab a pair of pliers to just gently grab that and pull it out. On second thought, I think I'm gonna try and use some really tiny picks to coax this out. This is a very, very small plug, and I do not want to damage it at all. There we go, got it out. The next step is to remove this plastic back plate. We don't have to remove any screws yet, but there are these little tabs here. You can see there's one there, there's one right here, and then on the back, you've got one on that side there, And same thing here. So it looks like there's only about 4 of them. So we're gonna go ahead and use a screwdriver to back these out and remove this back plate. All right, so we have the back plate off, and this exposes the board and the metal back plate. By the way, if I didn't say it already, make sure you have a towel down so you don't damage or scratch up your instrument cluster face. To remove the metal back plate, we have to remove 4 T9 screws. There's one here, one here, one here, and one here. So I'm gonna remove those and show you what's next. So the directions say that there are just those 4 T9s, but there's actually on this one 2 more. So there's 1, 2 here at the top that we also have to remove before removing the OEM metal back plate. And now the OEM metal back plate can be removed, exposing the entire circuit board. What we're gonna be working on next is this ribbon cable here. We're gonna have to be removing it. And I'm just gonna verify on the directions exactly how to do that before I go prodding and prying, and then I'll show you guys how. Okay, I've rotated this around so it's easier for you to see, but this is the ribbon cable. You see the brown here. And then there's this black trim piece here. That black trim is the connector. We're gonna flip that up this way. You can just use your fingers. You should be able to, but I've got gloves on and it's a little difficult. So I'm gonna just very, very carefully use this mini screwdriver and pop that up. You have to be very careful not to damage the ribbon, okay? So just if you're gonna use a tool, be extremely careful. But so we've gotten that, and so now the entire ribbon should just come out of the actual board like that. Be very, very gentle. So we have that removed. And okay, so we're gonna take this. Like I said, I think this is just gonna be more tricky than anything. I'm gonna get the bracket open. We're going to get this slid on here. I'm trying to get a good angle for you guys to see it. You can see it's got these little tabs that it kind of will use to guide it in. Once it's in, we close it, make sure it's in all the way. Okay, so we have that down. That's connected. And so now the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get our bracket set up here and ready. So I was having an issue getting my bracket, once I had it all connected, flipping it back down because these tabs are getting stuck here. So what I've done is I've taken those tabs on the back and I've bent them down so that I don't have to wedge them in there, so they're just resting on top. That should allow me to put all this back together, flip it down, and then I can flip those tabs back down and screw them in where they're supposed to be. So let's give that a shot. All right, so we got those in. Let's put our other ribbon cable in. Let's snap that down. And now we should be able to just flip this over. All right, so now we have that back down. We can bend these back down once we have this all completely back into place here. Some of these brackets, some of the wings on the side that you screw through might have to be adjusted to sit flat, but we have all that on there. And now we can screw these back in, and we can bend these back down on top. And now we just have to screw this back together, and then this will be ready to go back into the car. Once you've got your metal bracket fully installed, you can go ahead and put your plastic cover back on by just pressing it in into the right places. There's a few areas that it clips in all the way around. Just make sure all those tabs get secured in again. All right. And then the last little part here is make sure you plug in that speaker wire connection. Just be very gentle, make sure nothing breaks. Push that in, and then you can pop that back over. And now we are ready to actually plug the equipment in that's going to allow us to mirror our phone onto the actual instrument cluster when it's plugged in. Now that we have our instrument cluster all put back together with the board securely attached inside, we need to go ahead and prep the wires that are going to be coming out the back now. So what's new here compared to the old backplate, if you look, there's an HDMI port as well as this audio video port. This doesn't exist on the OEM one, see? So we are going to run the audio video cable right here. Now here's the thing, you see this cable, it's got this really big plastic head on it. You can see I have carved out a section because when I try and connect this, if I had all that plastic still there, this would not be able to attach here. And I still might have to trim a little bit more up. If you have to do this, just use extreme caution that you don't actually get into the wire itself. So, and this right here, this is nothing more than really a guide for the plug that goes in here. So I'm even thinking about trimming a little bit of this off, but for now I'm just gonna work on trimming this down and see if I can get it to make it work. All right, so you can see I've got that plugged in and it's pretty much forced up against this, but it works. It's in there nice and snug. This cable comes out because when we get this into the car, there's not a lot of room for this cable. You can't use a HDMI cord that comes straight up and out. So we've got that. The next thing we need to go ahead and attach is this audio video plug, and it's going to connect like this. And we have these ready to go. So when we put this back into the car, we're going to need to make sure that we've moved these into a position where we can access them without having to remove the actual instrument cluster anymore. So let me get set up here and I'll talk about exactly how this wiring is going to go. Let's talk about the wires that we're going to be connecting. So the first one is this HDMI out cord. It's got an HDMI right angle male plug that we've already got in. That's the one we trimmed. And that comes out to an HDMI female. Then we have this kit. This is your Wi-Fi dongle for casting your phone screen to the display. So it comes with this box here and then this wiring harness. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be connecting this to this wiring harness, and then this is going to connect into this cable. Now on the end here, you've got two things. You have a power cord, which this used to be connected to a USB port here for powering, but I'm not going to just plug it into a USB port. I plan on hardwiring it, so I cut it and I stripped the wires, got them ready for attaching. On the other hand is this little thing here, and this is actually your Wi-Fi antenna for your phone to be able to connect to this. So we are going to put this all together, connect this here, and this will get ran to a point where we can connect this to a power supply. That's one section. The next one is this audio video cable harness. This is allowing you to connect up to two separate devices for audio video stuff. So like I have a camera here, and if I ever want to connect that, I'll be able to go in and find these cables and wire it. Hopefully without having to take the instrument cluster out, which if I have to do that, that's no big deal. It's not a terrible job to do. But the big thing over here that you need to know about is this harness here. You've got this kind of red ground for power cable. It's got an adapter on the end, so for power ground, and then it connects to a ribbon wire that has this little flat piece, and there's some double-sided tape here on the back, and then you've got this little thing, and that's a button. You can't hear it, but that is a button, and this is what allows you to cycle through the channels on the actual Realsun mirroring, Miracast kind of mirroring information on your display. This was what allowed you to go to your stock driver's heads-up display, to whatever cameras you have connected, and then to your phone's mirroring screen. So this is important. We're going to definitely be connecting this to here, and then we're going to run this out and likely attach it right on the side of the steering column that's out of sight but easy to access with our hands. So that's what we're going to be using this for. And so we're going to connect this literally, this plug here, let me find it, this one here connects into this one here. All right, so we're gonna get these connected, and we're gonna start to put this back into the car and figure out how to run these cables and get this connected to some power. We're back at the car now, and we're gonna prep to get the instrument cluster back in, but let's take a look at some stuff here. So we've got where our instrument cluster is gonna be sitting. You can see the two plugs that go into the back of the instrument cluster. You can see there's not a lot of room, but there's this room here. But remember, when we put this in, the HDMI cable is going to be going off to the right here. My plan is to tuck it in this hole here and bring it down out the bottom. Now, I don't want it to just come out and be visible, so what I'm going to do, what my plan is, let me get my flashlight, to come underneath here, is to remove this piece of plastic that goes around the bottom of the steering column. And there's a bolt there, and it looks to be 8mm as well, and then there's a bolt over on that end right there. And what I'm hoping is I can take those two out and just get it loose enough that I can feed that cable down and out and under, and then I'll be able to tuck it over there in that upper corner underneath this, and eventually run that cable over to our center console, because I think I'm gonna plan on connecting the power to my start stop button, because I wanna make sure that this isn't constantly getting power. I want it to only come on with my ACC power, so that it comes on and off with the car. So that's my plan. The other wire that has the button that we're going to be using with this, my plan is to pretty much let it come out the side here and around into this, and then we'll attach it to the side of the steering column here where it's not visible, not very easily seen by other people, but still real easy for me to access. So that's my plan right now. We'll see how it goes. Okay, another change of plans. I popped this apart to look at this wiring harness, and that's just way too complicated, and I just don't trust myself trying to splice into that. So instead what I'm gonna do is my next plan is run the cord on the inside of this trim and somehow get it up into my spare pocket here. Excuse me how filthy the car is. What I'm going to do is attempt to pop this whole cover here off for the Audi music interface thing, because that'll open up a hole that goes down underneath this, and I should be able to fish that wire up here. And then I've got this little 12-volt adapter that's got two USB ports to plug in, and so I'm gonna have to rewire that USB plug to the wiring harness, which isn't a big deal, but that's my plan now. So I'm gonna work on trying to get this off, and all I'm gonna do is use a pry tool to get behind it and pop it out, because it should just be held in by some clips. So I'm gonna work on that, and once I get it out, that should give me a better idea if I'll be able to do this plan or not. This is actually pretty simple to pop out. I'm gonna use a nice wide pry tool and get it on the back here. I know it's kind of hard to see with my light, but get it wedged in on the back, and then just push down, and then that pops it open, and you can pull this out, exposing this hole. Now it's not as free and clear as I'd hoped, but I think I'll be able to figure something out to get something down on the side of this so that we can make this happen. Okay guys, so to get this box out completely and get out of the way, you just take it from here, you roll it all the way over, and there's this little strap that goes across. Use a pick or screwdriver or something to clip this here, and then this bar will pop up and over, and then you see this kind of like line here. You want to take a trim tool that sticks all the way, you want to take a trim tool that sticks all the way in there and then pop it, and it should just come all the way out. I'm going to try and do this while filming with one hand. It'll be tricky, but let's see here. So there's that, and then this, I'm just going to shove it in here. Let's use this end. And that pops out like that. And then that gets the whole thing out of there. And then this is just kind of hanging out there. We can get this out of the way. And now we got the most room to work with as possible. All right, I hope I got a good angle on that. So we are here in the car. We're about to put the instrument cluster back in and start to wire this stuff. So you can see I've got everything plugged in, and I was wrong, by the way, with the HDMI cord. It doesn't angle this way, it angles to the side here. So what we can do is just get this and start to run it down and kind of fish it around, and we should be able to fish it through some stuff and find a way out to the bottom. So that's what I'm going to work on right now, and I'll be back with you once I get this fished out to a way we can work with it. Okay, so I got this thing fished through. Let me show you what I did. So you can see the cord here. I took it off of the actual instrument cluster just to make it easier to work with in here. And I sent it down in here to the bottom right here. And you can see how it kind of goes back behind that thing, and I did this all just with my hand. And then remember, we loosened up the thing on the bottom. Let me show you guys here. You can see that I was able to fish it out under the side here and all the way back. So I'll be able to bolt this back up, and then we'll be able to run that along the side trim. It just took about 10 minutes of scratching my hand up a little bit and pushing it down there. Now it's set up to come off on the right side here, which that's going to cause it to have to do a weird bend. So I've got plenty of slack. I might rotate this over and have it come up over the top of this and up through this little hole here so that it's completely out of the way and aligned correctly. That's what I'll probably actually do. That way it's out of the way, no chance of it getting kinked up in the steering wheel column moving back and forth. But so far I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, I have the cord ran here for the actual power supply and for the mirror cast and all that. I'm gonna grab my instrument cluster and I'm gonna go ahead and get it plugged in. I left myself plenty of slack so I got room to plug this in here. All right, so that's in. This wire is in for running our control button. So we're gonna go ahead and start to maneuver this in. Now, as I push this in, I'm gonna pull the slack out on this cord here so that I don't have anything in the way. We're just gonna do a quick test set in here to make sure everything goes in correctly, and it does. Now, at this point, if you haven't yet, this is a good time to plug it in and make sure that everything works. I've done this already, so I'm confident it's going to be working just fine. If you haven't, before you get everything tightened up, stop now, plug it in, set everything up, make sure it is working. That means you got to connect the instrument cluster to the cables in the back of the car. And keep in mind, if there's not power running to the board as well as the instrument cluster, the center won't work. Your tachometer and speedometer will light up, but nothing else will. So you have to have everything connected correctly. So go ahead and do that. But now I'm going to go ahead and plug in the actual OEM wiring harnesses. And you have to kind of just do this by feel because you don't have a ton of room back here to work with. All right, so have it all in there. You can see the screen's messed up. That's just because we don't have power going to the actual mirror cast system yet. But everything is in there, it's all connected, and we can go ahead, tighten this down and make sure everything works, and then we can put everything back together and start to set this up. Okay guys, so here's where we're at. Remember when I told you all these were for connecting the other inputs and cameras, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Well, I was a little bit wrong. You can see that there's a black, a red, and a yellow. These actually have to be connected for the system to work, because right now when I turned it on, I just got a white screen, and I forgot about this right here. And after discussion with Realsun, I realized that I need to actually connect these. So we have to connect the black, obviously, to a ground, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna run that over to this bolt up here. And you can see I've already got something connected to it for my hardware or for my radar detector, so we're gonna have to do that. And then the red and the yellow, that's your power and your ACC on, so that it comes on and off with the car. We have to run those to some fuses over here. And I've got some pictures that show you what fuses to use. Pretty sure we're gonna use this one here where that 10 amp fuse is at, and then we're gonna use one in here right underneath that 30 amp, right underneath here. I've got some pictures. I'll put them up here so that you can see them. Pause for a moment as these come up, and that shows the wires moving through the back and then routed over this way to get plugged in here. So I'm going to work on that. Now the issue is this wiring harness isn't long enough to come over here, so you're gonna have to add wires to this. Since I'm not using that camera, I'm just gonna take the wires off of it so that I can extend these. So while these are red, yellow, black, if you use just red and black wires, keep in mind that's what's going to show up over here, so it might look weird, but you might want to mark them something so you know which ones are which. But I'm going to go ahead and splice in some extensions for these and get this routed and hopefully get this thing working here. Okay, so we're back here at the fuse panel. I just want to show you guys what I did. Let me widen this out a little bit. I attached some spare wire that I had to the red, yellow, and black wires off of the wiring harness here. This is what powers the actual board from Realsun. So I have that, and I have put the wires in here. So this wire right here, that one is my ground wire, and I have it connected up there along with my radar detector. Then the red wire going off to the right here. This one right here. That's obviously our power, and it's wrapped around the 7.5 amp fuse and shoved in there. And then down here to the bottom left, you see that 20 amp fuse. Let me see if I can get this to focus. There we go. So I added that 20 amp fuse and connected the yellow wire. That it's black, I know, but it comes down here and connects to the yellow one. I connected that. That should be our ACC on-off fuse. So hopefully this works, and I'm gonna get it all plugged up real quick before I tuck it away and give it a test. Okay, we are in the car after wiring everything up and getting that stuff, you know, wired through. There's kind of tricky, but not horrible. It's, you know, it is what it is. So you can see I've got my regular display here from my heads-up display. And you remember this ribbon cable we're talking about with the button? If I press this, oh man, look at that. We've got the mirror screen 5G display. So let me zoom in on this here, or let me focus in on this a little bit. Right now, it's initiating you to set up your system. And you can see on the left is Apple, on the right is Android. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit better. So we need it for Android for my phone. If you're Apple, you want it on Apple. But if you look down at this box here, there's a little button. And I think that blue button on the Miracast box, if I press that blue button, it switches over to Android. Okay guys, so I showed you how I got the HDMI cable off the back of the instrument cluster, routed down and through and underneath here. So if we remember, it came out the back over there, right? You can't see it, can you? It's because I've routed it already. When what I did was, let me get my hand situated up here. Up here in this corner where these panel covers meet, I just pulled that panel cover back, and you can see, if we look right up here, trying to get a light on it, you can kind of see the cable kind of cutting through there, and it just comes down, and I tucked it up underneath that panel just to the right of the flashlight hotspot, and I tucked it all the way underneath there, and I started running it down, tucking it up as much as I could, and I just moved the seat backwards and tucked it up as much as I could all the way to the back here. Let me move to the behind the seat. After that, right here, this panel, that, you can see my little stick there. There's a straight path that goes from inside the compartment down. Let me push my seat up a little bit. We come over here, right here on that line, just pretty much right under where the armrest tilt is, there's a straight line that comes down from inside of that compartment. Remember the little box we took out? It comes straight down. And what I did was I just put the seat all the way forward and put the backrest all the way forward, and I took that HDMI cable and I shoved it up as much as I could with my fingers all the way up here and fed the head of that HDMI cable up, and then I could eventually see it there, and I used a pair of needle nose pliers to grab the HDMI cable and pull it in here, because you're gonna want access to it when it's plugged up to the actual Miracast, because you might have to hit the button on the side of that, so you don't want it hidden. So we've got it now to where all the Miracast stuff will be located in this box right here. So now all we have to do is tighten up everything and put everything back together, and I'll show you how to use the system and how to set it up on your phone. Just because I don't want to leave a giant open hole in this little cubby space, I've taken the cover that I popped off there for the Audi audio thing, and I'm going to just Dremel out a tiny little circle here on this face. That way the HDMI cable can come out of it, and I can put this back in there, and it can look like a nice clean install. So I'm going to try my best to Dremel this as cleanly as possible. I got this in my vice grip. Let's hope that it stays without me cracking this thing. Here it goes. I think that actually looks pretty good. Okay, here's a last quick final look at how the HDMI cable and the Miracast system are set up. Let me dial the brightness back a little bit here. Okay, so you have, let me get my hand switched around here. You have your HDMI cable. That's the one that comes out of the ground here. So that's coming out, and you can see I've got the little port cut for it. That works nicely. That connects directly to the Miracast box, the control unit, whatever you want to call it. And you want this accessible because there's a button over here on the side that glows blue whenever it's powered. And you have to use that button to navigate the menu, you'll see here. Then out of the other end of that, the wiring harness is plugged in here, and that comes off and kind of splits to a Y. One goes to the Wi-Fi antenna, which we just got sitting there. The other one comes to the power cord, which I had to do a repair on. Remember, you do not need to cut yours for this project. I thought I was going to have to do that. I ended up not doing it, so I repaired mine, and that's plugged in to my 12 volt charger because I got a USB adapter here. That is done. All we have to do now is put the rest of the car back together, and then we have to pretty much just sticky this somewhere on the panel once we get everything together, and then I'll show you guys how to set up the Miracast with your Realsun cockpit interface. And last thing I do want to show you is where we mounted that button. You can see that the ribbon cable's there, and we used the the double-sided tape to put it there. I've got plenty of slack to let the steering column come out, forward, backwards, up, down, everything. It's a perfect little spot there, and you can't see the cable otherwise. So that's where we have our button to swap between modes. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is turn the vehicle on, just the ACC power only. We're going to let everything start up. By the way, I'm using my wife's phone here because I have to use two phones to record this whole endeavor. As you can see, when the car starts up, the first thing that comes up on our heads-up display here is going to be the startup screen for the Miracast system. And so you can see here you've got a few different options, but on the bottom left and bottom right are what you need to really focus on. You see that there's Apple on the bottom left and there's Android on the bottom right. And so obviously whatever phone you're going to be using, you need to select the right one. And the way that you select that is by pressing the button on the side of the Miracast dongle box thing, the one that connects to that HDMI cord that's in the little cubby. You press that and that'll switch back and forth. Now, for me on my Android, I've got a Samsung Note 10 Plus. In order to find the Wi-Fi signal, for whatever reason, I have to have it on the Apple selection, which is what we have here. You can see Apple side is selected. And I'll show you what that looks like on my phone. I'll show a screen recording here in a little bit. But, so we have that. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to the screen recording from my Samsung so I can show you how to set everything up from scratch. And then I'll come back to this and show you what it looks like when you're actually mirroring to the car. We are looking at a screen recording of my Samsung now, and I'm going to show you exactly what you have to do to set this up for Samsung. This should be very similar for an iPhone as well, but here's how we do it on my Android system. I'm going to go to my Wi-Fi. I'm going to enable Wi-Fi, and then I'm going to hold down my Wi-Fi button to bring up the options. As it comes up, you can see that the mirror screen 5G network is available. We're going to press on it, and you have to enter the password. The password for this is 12345678. After you've put in the password, hit connect. It's going to say checking quality of your internet connection, and then it's going to say connected without internet. Then my phone has this alert that comes up, and we're going to say keep Wi-Fi connection. So after you've got that established, have your phone connected via Wi-Fi to the mirror screen, you're going to exit out of this, and you're going to look for the app Easy Mirror. If you haven't downloaded the Easy Mirror app, you need to download that in order to go to the next step. So once you've got that downloaded, you're going to go into the app, and we're going to go to the main page. So the main page is this one right here. If you see at the at the top, it says Miracast/Chromecast, and then there's one that says Easy Mirror app. You don't really need to use the Easy Mirror app at all. You just need to hit Miracast Chromecast, and then at the bottom it says connect. You're going to press the connect button, and when it comes up here, it's going to say no nearby devices were found. So then I'm going to click those top buttons at the top right, the three little dots, and it's going to say Enable Wireless Display. I'm going to press that as well. But it still says that there's nothing found. Now, if you remember what I just showed you on the actual HDMI screen, I'm sorry, the MMI screen in the car, I was selected on the Apple version of this. And so if I go back over to the dongle and I click the dongle to switch it to Android, once it's established on Android, the mirror screen comes up in the Easy Mirror app. I press on it to connect through the app. You have to give it just a few seconds to connect. And then once it's done connecting, it will start to mirror to the actual MMI system. Okay, so we're looking at my MMI screen here, the heads-up display between the tachometer and speedometer. Once again, I'm back on recording with my wife's phone while I use my phone to cast here so you can see what's going on. So I'm at my home screen, and if I turn my phone from vertical to landscape, you can see that it takes up the entire MMI screen. I'll bring up something like Waze here so you can see what it looks like. So I've got Waze completely brought up here. Let me focus that back for you. And it moves in real time. There's very little of a delay here. Now here's one big thing, and I will show you this on a screen record as well momentarily. Actually, I'm going to use my wife's phone to record this because I don't think I can screen record and cast at the same time. So on my phone, if I swipe down, because I noticed that I wasn't getting any audio output while mirroring, while mirror casting. So if I swipe down and I go to my audio output and I press that button, sorry, getting a phone call there. So once again, if I swipe down and I go to audio output, you can see I have three options: this phone, mirror screen, or Audi MMI. If it's going to default to be doing the audio output through the mirror screen. So if you want to hear, you know, your Pandora, your Spotify, your Waze notifications, all that, you need to make sure you're transmitting audio through the vehicle. Once you do that, you should be able to hear all audio and not have any issues. So we're going to go back to the actual my screen. And you can see everything mirrors just fine. And then once again, don't forget that we've got that button installed there. And so I showed you that. I'm going to go back to the screen here, and I'll show you whenever I press that button, that is going to go back to your regular MMI heads-up display here. And if I press that button again, it goes back to my mirror cast. Now keep in mind, if you've installed one of the inline cameras along with the system, you'll be cycling through all of that with the same button. Okay guys, so this wraps up our DIY on installing the Realsun cockpit and a digital interface that is going to allow you to, mirror whatever's on your phone screen to your center heads-up display on your instrument cluster. Hope you guys found this pretty easy to follow. There was a lot that I had to figure out as we went along, and thank goodness the rep at Realsun was there to answer my questions, which was awesome. If you guys want to buy this, you can look in the description. We're going to have a link to where you can buy this, as well as a discount code to save you some money on purchasing this. So that's pretty awesome. I think they're going to come out with some other products in the future for our cars, and so if they do, I should be able to get a hold of some of those and do some more future DIYs. But if you guys have any questions, as always, leave them in the comments below. Thank you for the support. We really love the energy from you guys. It feels like everyone's just getting more and more excited about these cars, so we're happy to keep bringing you guys videos on this. If you like this, let us know, and yeah, we'll see you guys at the next DIY video.